Hey there, I'm Caleb Brown. Welcome back to KMFCast. This is episode 8. Really excited about this one. I'm always excited about these episodes, but really excited about this one because Golang is something that I just, my years at X Team, I've just, increasingly been hearing more and more and more about Golang, meeting more Go developers. And today I brought in 3 amazing folks that are all familiar with Go. They're all Go developers working with it. And I just wanted to do a quick chat with everyone about a couple different aspects of Go. So I'll go ahead and get our cards here so we know what we're chatting about, and I'll bring in everyone, and then we'll do some introductions. I'm going to bring in Lauren, I'm going to bring in Arthur, and I'm going to bring in Giuliano, and I'm actually going to do this format so we can see everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Very, very much appreciate it. And yeah, as I was saying in the introduction, I wanted to kick it off introducing all 3 of you. How you want to introduce yourself, totally up to you. But I did want to cover, I think it would be an interesting, aspect. I think it would be fascinating to hear the first time you encountered Go. And just kind of your early thoughts when you were first looking over everything. What was on your mind when you were seeing Go? So, Arthur, do you want to take it off? You want to tell us or introduce yourself and tell us the first time you encountered Go?
Okay, no problem. So, hello guys, my name is Arthur. First time that I had any contact with Go, it was actually on the actual year of release of it. Everybody was talking about, this is the new Google's language and all that, and it had a lot of pretty interesting features. And I remember that in my first contact, I felt that a lot of those features were step backs on the direction that usually technology went. I was really wrong, and today I'm really happy to had that first contact. So I've been working with Go since that time. So long time.
Awesome. How about you, Giuliano?
Hey, my name is Giuliano. I've been working with Go for the past 6 or 7 years, something like that. And the first time I had some contact with the language, I was a C# developer, and the company I was working on decided that they would like to migrate legacy services to Go and create every new service in Go because it would bring a lot of benefits to the company itself, and the language was easy to pick up. So at that time, I was kind of scared that, hey, maybe this is not going to be so good down the road. Yes. And it turns out I was super wrong. Everything performed way better, and the costs of infrastructure went down. So it was super cool to have migrated to that language. And it is my favorite language nowadays.
Awesome. That's cool. Cool to learn. Lauren, how about yourself? Introduce, and I'd like to hear the first time you encountered Go.
Okay, now, so before that, I would like to say that it's a dream coming true to be here with Juliano and Arthur because they are my heroes. So it's quite nice to be here. But yeah, I think I'm gonna raise my young person plaque here because my first encounter with Go was in my internship. I'm one of the persons that had Go as my first programming language, professionally at least. So yeah, I didn't have that much knowledge of other languages. I was in college in my second year, so I loved Go at first because I was dealing with C and C++ at college. It was way simpler, and I got to learn the concepts that I didn't know at that time in a fun way, which I wasn't having that much fun with C and C++. So that's pretty much my story.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. I'm curious, before we move on to our kind of first official topic, I'm curious, did the Google backing of Go have any influence on how you kind of approached it? Like, did it set it up to be established, or did that actually make it skeptical? Because it was even though obviously there's fantastic engineers at Google, were you skeptical that it didn't come, from a more like kind of rogue developer group that it came from Google? I'm just interested from a development standpoint how the Google branding affected your kind of first impression.
The Google branding didn't affect my first impressions, at least,
Yeah.
but the services and tools that used Go did.
Okay.
Because a lot of things we use on a day-to-day basis, infrastructure related, like Kubernetes, Docker, Prometheus, a lot of tools and services that we use that are super reliable and established are all developed in Go. So that was what actually gave me security that, hey, this language is indeed solid.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Everyone else? Kind of same or?
Yeah.
And
I think from my experience, the Google branding did not interfere directly on my choice of learning the language itself, but it was the reason why the language got to my circle and to my
Sure.
feed and all that. So basically, I decided to learn Go out of curiosity.
Yep.
And that was the Google branding was a huge factor on that, because a lot of media was created around it.
Yeah, makes sense. Lauren?
And of course, I agree with them, but it's a big deal to have a company like Google as in the back of the language. Of course, it was created by amazing engineers, and,
Yep.
and having this kind of background, of course, makes at least a few people happy by having this kind of support.
Absolutely. Awesome. Great answers. And so, yeah, without further ado, we can jump into our first real official topic, which we sort of how we started things as a good transition into this. But I'm curious about, getting started with Go. Again, you all gave your experiences about that first time, you experienced it, but, especially a developer that maybe does have a background in Java or Python or something like that. Just kind of curious what you kind of, whether it's advice or whether it's the way to look at that learning curve, as obviously Go is getting more and more popular. Just kind of interested from your perspective, just kind of what it's like to get started with Go, and any help that you can give developers that are interested.
Yeah, sure. Based on experiences with Java, Python, and C Sharp, I think that Go is way easier than all of those three languages because everything is baked into the language. It's similar to Python in that way, but the constructs of the language are simpler. I mean, you don't have a lot of different types of loop. You don't have a lot of types of dependency injection, package management. Everything is stripped down and simpler. So because of that, if you go through quick language documentation like the Tour of Go or Go by example, things like that, you can pick up the language real quick.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that this tip that Juliano gave is really it's really huge, because a lot of times I see people fighting against Go, trying to learn Go. So usually the solutions, especially in Go, are the simpler ones. Are the simpler approach. So a lot of times we have a lot of people asking about, I want to do this. How do I do that? And usually the answer is like is that try the simpler way. So I think that that especially for newcomers, learning Go, it's a huge learning experience as well. Not only regarding the language, because it makes you think about what's the simplest way, what's the way in which I can do this with the simpler tools. So I think that's a huge one. That's awesome. My tip at least. Try to be simple.
Yeah. Lauren, how about you?
Quite nice. What Arthur said is quite nice. I think the first thing I would recommend is to go with an open heart. Things won't work the way that that work in Python or in Java. It's just different, and it's not wrong because it's different. I think it's something that newcomers tend to think like, why do you handle errors in a simple way like that? It sounds like fragile and things will break at any time, but there is a reason that Go was designed the way it was. The engineers that developed the language had decades of experience, and they just went for the decisions that were already working for decades. So there is a reason on why Go is that way. And the path that Giuliano mentioned about the tour of Go, and Go by example is a great path to start.
Yeah. Cool. Is there a particular language, like I know that Java gets mentioned a lot, and Python as well. Is going from Java to Python, or sorry, Java to Go, is that I just see that comparison a lot. Is there a particular reason for that from your point of view?
Yeah, a lot of companies that work with Java, C Sharp, and some of those languages started migrating everything they had to Go. So that's why it gets mentioned a lot on the internet, because a lot of companies and people tend to search for that because it is a migration path that is trending amongst companies, for a lot of different reasons.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. And that's actually, sorry, go ahead, Arthur.
No, and I would also add that the syntax of those languages it's similar in some ways. As I mentioned, Go usually simpler, but you can see some inspirations coming from those.
Awesome.
That's true.
Makes Cool. And that's actually a great kind of segue into the reasons why you may switch from Go if you already have a Java setup or something like that. Or also, I'm interested in, the reasons or the situations in which if you're starting a brand new project, you would just go to Go, and maybe even some situations where Go might not be the best to start a new project with. So if anyone wants to jump in with reasons that a company might switch to Go from something else, and then maybe we could get into times when a new project maybe wouldn't even make sense to or make the most sense to start with Go.
Got it. Yeah. Currently, starting any new web API project with Go is a reasonable choice because one of the benefits is that you tend to write a lot less in Go than in other languages. You tend to have a code base that is way smaller and simpler to digest.
Mhm.
And another good reason that companies and people are migrating to Go is that the language itself is quite easy to pick up. So because of that, it's easier to train new people like junior developers or even senior developers that are switching from a different language to Go. It's easier to train them up and get them up to speed in order to actually develop on this new language. And the other reason that a lot of companies are migrating is that cloud billing is super expensive.
Yeah.
If you tend to use languages that consume a lot of resources natively, and Go is super light on the memory and CPU usage side of things. So because of that, you tend to save money on cloud computing costs. And the other reason that a lot of people tend to migrate to Go is because of it has the concurrency model baked into the language, and it is a quite powerful one. It then uses green threads, which is a different implementation for concurrency modeling, and it uses channels, which is kind of a publish-subscribe construct built in directly into the language. So those things in conjunction tend to be the reason why most companies migrate to Go.
Besides that, there's also the fact that, of course, besides being a compact language, easy to learn, it has a powerful concurrency model. It also has a good tooling, a toolkit for our development day-to-day life. So we have testing, we have documentation, we have cross compiling, we have benchmarking, profiling, and many of these features are built in Go, and they are quite powerful. So this is also a good reason to switch to Go.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important to also notice that Go is not a silver bullet. You're not going to be solving every single problem in the world with the language, but the language excels in a lot of different areas that are usually used by modern companies because the language itself it's pretty modern. So a lot of the issues that we had in the past were accounted into the language. Were taken into account when building the language because most of the languages that have the same performance as Go were built in a period in which we did not have technology as we have right now. We didn't build web apps the way that we build right now and all that. So I think that The language itself, it's huge if you are trying to do anything like that. And one thing that Giuliano and Lauren mentioned as well, I'm going to be adding one more to that list, is the simple fact that you can build a lot of things with the with the standard library from Go, and that's also huge because you don't need to be learning a new JavaScript framework every day if you want to be working with that. So that's a huge thing. That's something that really can be taken into account because the knowledge it can transfer from one company to the other and one project to the other pretty easily. So I think that's a huge selling point on using the language today.
Awesome. And then, kind of like I mentioned, times when you may not go to Go. If I came to you and said, Arthur, Lauren, Juliana, I want to make a dating app. I want to make a web-based platform for selling plants. Anything. Is there a situation where you'd say, Go may not make so much sense there?
One scenario that I see that another language in specific is way better than Go is for low-level systems programming. I see Rust is way better than Go into that regard. If you want to build a web application that has a specific front end, I mean, obviously you're going to use JavaScript for that, not Go. But anything that's not strictly backend API related, I think you can probably use another language for that.
You can, of course, play with different approaches. There are people playing with games, with IoT, and with these other fields. But Go overall, it's not there to solve these problems.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And I would add as well that a place in which I saw a lot of growth coming from the Go community, but it's not in the same place as the other languages that are usually used for that, is on the data science area. We have a lot of good solutions, but they are usually not using the same standard that that specific area uses today. So it can be harder for some data scientists to go about that.
Cool.
And one thing that usually happens is that whenever you're trying to solve a problem with Go, it will become really obvious if it's not meant for that. It will literally scream in your face that, hey, I can't do that.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Good to know. Good to learn. And that's an interesting, and I think we kind of talked about it a little bit with, how convenient Go can be with having everything. You're talking about benchmarking and testing and things like that. Some of the tooling projects kind of built into Go. So that's a good segue to Go, and I'm sure there's other reasons. But I'm just interesting to hear, kind of your favorite features about Go and the environment. And before we kind of went on live here, I was mentioning also want to extend that into, if I actually don't know this personally, I don't know if Go, has a great community. I imagine that it's pretty good. But, I just wanted to extend it beyond, just the actual features, just kind of any aspect of Go that is, a reason that you really like it, some of your favorite features. Just want to hear more about why, you kind of love that whole ecosystem.
The community is great. Lauren can talk even more than me about that. It is a pretty bright community. Everyone is super active in open source projects, a lot of big projects, so a lot of good people working there. But the tooling itself, that was the part that surprised me the most, because the compiler is amazing. The test tools are amazing. You can do benchmarking natively on the language. You can do profiling as well as a baked-in tool. So everything that makes developer life easier is already built in. You don't need to go to an external package, to an external dependency to actually do the work that you do day to day. Everything is already there. You just need to use it. So my favorite feature of Go is that it is feature complete.
Yeah. I don't know if Lauren is going to be adding anything to that directly, but I would like to also say that the community from Go, I think especially because the language it started being more in a niche situation. Then it got mainstream. So I feel that the community still have that same feeling. So people are usually closer together. You can find a lot of different communities in which you can approach to really high ups developers that use the language itself. So I think that the community have that. I don't want to use that expression, but it's kind of a startup methodology to itself. It's not a community that's there for like years and years and had the opportunity of like already branching off and having different sub communities inside of it. It's usually one big community in which you can find people getting closer to the other. I think that's it from my side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. And talking about community, Go is a language that was created to be open sourced in its first version, and I think this impacts a lot on the way that the community was built and how the language has grown in the past few years. And of course, besides technically speaking, the community had a huge impact on on the decisions that were made for the language, but also on growing the community. I see that there are different kinds of people that come from different backgrounds emerging into what the Go community is trying to be, and that's from different countries, different backgrounds, different kind of people. That's quite awesome. We have, for instance, we have Go Bridge. We have women who go with different chapters around the world. We have many open source content. You can find many open source books that the community builds together to create good content for the people that are learning the language, and that's quite special. If you particularly ask me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to touch on that I think is interesting, something that was brought up a couple of times is how everything is, feature complete, as you mentioned. Everything, from testing to these things are built in. Are there instances when the existing built-in, framework of that isn't enough for what you want to do? Is it easy to expand? Go, like, can you pull in third-party libraries for some of that stuff? I truly, even though I have a development background, I've never touched Go, so this is all very new to me.
No, there is one classic example that everyone goes through, is that the net HTTP package, which is in the standard library to manage routes for your web server, it doesn't support path variables. So you can't do regular path variables like most languages. You can't do like find by ID and expect that ID to actually be mapped to something into the pathing system, because the reason for that, at least what I've heard, is that you can use query string variables for any of that, and it's easier to match on a regex side of things, so it's faster to match on that than to match on arbitrary strings in the middle of your pathing. So if you have a specific reason to do to use variables in your pathing system, then you should use a third-party libraries. There are a lot, like GorillaMux, Chai, and other libraries that you can use that offer you a different style of routing than the standard library.
Yeah. Other good example is a testing package that we tend to use. Of course, the native built-in package is quite good, but people also tend to use Testify to give more powers for your testing, and that's also a good example. I think mainly the reason why people create different packages is, of course, to cover these gaps that the language has, because it's a compact language. So the goal is not to cover every single case. And it's also an opinionated language. It's pragmatic. There's only one way to do things, and people don't usually agree with this one way to do things, and they actually create their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those usually are to actually map to their background, right? People tend to adapt the create a new framework to be more similar to what it has on the language it was working before. So that tends to happen a lot. People create package to adapt the language to the reality that they are familiar with.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, that's exactly why I mentioned that I see a lot of people fighting against
Gotcha.
Go and going that route, because a lot of things are changed and are simplified for a reason. So I think on that same topic, I had seen a lot of good packages that relate pretty easily to the packages or the way that other languages do some things in Go. But the actual strength of Go, it's not being used on those packages, so it's kind of it's kind of pointless, because you're using language for a reason. It's a tool, and when some people try to go really hard on that route, it usually lends to, oh, why I'm doing this here, why I'm using Go for this. It's the same thing as people did to Bootstrap in the past. A lot of people did use that, and they basically rewrote the whole CSS framework, trying to do stylization by their standards. And the goal of the framework itself was to standardize, was to give you a baseline. So I think that's something that happens a lot, and something that you need to be at least wary of to prevent doing that.
Totally makes sense. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Like I said, did not know how that worked, and I'm always happy when I get to learn something on this podcast. Moving forward, this is actually our last topic. We kind of blazed through all of this, but we'll do some final thoughts. We'll do some wrap up. I have some kind of questions about getting into Go. It's just some advice that you'd give to maybe junior devs, things like that. But I did want to kind of wrap things up with. Again, I knew that Go was popular, but as I was doing research for this chat, I didn't know that it was used in things like SoundCloud. Uber uses it. Obviously, I knew a lot of Google products would use it. YouTube uses it. But yeah, I just wanted to hear, and even if you want to do, I'm mentioning like consumer products. If you want to, some of the more tech focused products that use it or are built in it. Just wanted to talk about some cool stuff, bring some awareness to things that are, that have Go behind them.
Yeah, on the technical side of things, a lot of the tools that we use on a daily basis in different companies are mostly built with Go. So Docker, Kubernetes, Prometheus, InfluxDB, Datadog, a lot of the things infrastructure related, etcd, core DNS. So basically, things that tend to be on the systems level or network level or systems build engine level, those things are mostly built with Go, which is amazing, which shows that the language is super robust and good for those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And on the consumer product side of things, for people in Latin America, there's a huge company called Mercado Libre. Yeah. Almost all of the services are written in Go, so that's also huge. A lot of consumer products, like you mentioned, SoundCloud, they also use Go, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm. And Fox.
There you go. Yeah. And Arthur or Lauren, anything else that you think is pretty cool that's written in Go, especially if someone, it's. I do like talking about the consumer products. I've always found that fascinating. Of what websites do I use every day, or what apps do I use every day? What's the core tech behind them? I always think that's fascinating. So yeah, and anything you want to share would be cool.
Yeah, I think Giuliano really rounded it up. For these specific ones that I wanted to summarize. But one thing that's really interesting about this and really gets my attention every time we talk about why companies go to Go and all that, and that also helps a lot of people to understand is that Go, it's really good for performance. Mm-hmm. And every time you see a company or a product that needs to have that, it usually it's gonna have some time in which somebody's gonna be suggesting, hey, why don't we try Go? Why don't we try to tackle this problem using that language? And I think that's a has a huge part on a topic that I forgot to send to you, but I think it's really relevant as well. In which a lot of people say, why can't I find junior positions for Go? Why can't I find a lot of if everybody needs Go? Why I only find more senior positions out there? And I think the reason it's because of that, because the time in which companies usually try to choose to do that switch and choose a language, it's usually a pretty sensitive time in which the company needs somebody to drive that forward.
Yep.
So that's why I've seen a lot of people saying, "Hey, Go, it's not for me. I need to be at least senior to learn that." And I'm always like, "No, you don't need to be doing that. The language itself, it's really good to use. It's really easy to use." But a lot of people, when they see the market, they usually think about that. They usually have that perception, and this is something that that I had explained to a lot of people. But it's good having this this being also said, because a lot of people get demotivated or say that the language itself it's only used between seniors, and that's not true, because right now a lot of companies that already did that migration are already looking for new developers to compose their team and to be working on that. So it's only a matter of timing.
Right.
I think, and this is a really good thing to say.
Absolutely. No, that's I'm super happy you brought that up, and that's what I was going to say. So based on that logic, it is good for developers, even if they're more on the junior side, to start learning, because if this is the path that more people, that maybe folks are hiring senior level developers to help them make that migration over, but that opens the door, eventually, soon enough. Tech moves fast, as we all know. Eventually, there will be more Go roles that are more on the junior and mid size, right?
Yeah, the demand is so high right now that companies are actually offering to train people. So they are offering roles where you don't actually need to know Go. You can come in with any sort of background. You can be junior or senior, whatever, and they're going to train you up.
Yeah, and also I think I can talk about my experience as having Go as my first language.
Yeah, please.
And of course, coming from a junior background while learning Go, Go is a language that I didn't need to make many things to make things work. Like I got to set up a router and build an API with a small amount of code. And the best part is that I can actually dig into the functions and look into the source code. That is quite simple in most of the cases. Of course, a few places are not that simple for juniors, but it's quite awesome how I can get a depth of knowledge with Go. I get to see the coroutines spin up. I get to look into the source code and see what happened with them. I get to learn how the scheduler works. I get to learn how the compiler works. So having Go during college, while I was learning the theory, helped me a lot to visualize these kind of topics, of low-level topics that otherwise I wouldn't have that much of an unease to do with other languages. And of course, I had C, but in my opinion, C is more complicated to see these kind of things because we need to deal with more stuff, and Go actually covers these things for us.
Awesome. Very cool. Makes sense. And then, yeah, like I said, so that was kind of our last topic, and we made good time on this one. But I was curious if there was Giuliano. Was that intentional? I don't know why we lost Giuliano.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, sorry. We got you back in. But yeah, so a thing that, and I know we covered a lot of this, so if you already kind of said this, that's okay. But a question I like to ask a lot of developers is like, if you could give yourself, whether it's advice or just a tip or something when you were learning Go that you would appreciate now, if you could go back in time and share that with yourself. Is there something that maybe it's a resource, maybe it's a certain video that really helped? Just any bit that you could kind of advice that you could give to yourself and that might help a junior dev jumping into Go. I think it's good, Arthur, that you brought up the fact that right, we are going to see more and more Go opportunities, especially for junior and mid-level developers. But yeah, just any kind of last wrapping up Go tips that you want to share would be awesome.
One that helped me a lot was forget everything you learned so far and go in with a mindset that you know nothing. Start from the ground up. Because when I started to map knowledge that I had on other languages to Go, I was trying to build things in Go in a way that the language was not designed to be used as. And if you go into the language with a mindset that, hey, I know nothing, I should learn everything from the ground up, that was the fastest way to get running with the language.
Totally makes sense. Lauren, any advice that you'd give yourself when you were getting started?
Man, I have a list of things.
Let's hear it.
When people ask me about a roadmap on how to get started with Go, I suggest the true of Go as the first step, and go by example, as we already said. But also, don't try to learn too much theory. Start building something and try to wrap up your mind with what you know into what you don't know. So instead of reading many books and watching many videos and talks and stuff like that, build your own API, build a simple project and cover the full cycle of it, not just developing in Go, but actually testing it, documenting it, and deploying it, and cover the full cycle so that you can have an idea on the power of what Go can bring to you.
Totally makes sense.
I think my tip would resonate a lot with the tip that Juliano gave, but on other point as well. I think that especially this was an experience of mine. I didn't had a CS background, so when I got in contact with Go, I was afraid of going on a lower level of abstraction that the other languages usually go. And I think my tip would be don't be afraid of that. Go there. Sometimes the best solution is a for loop. Sometimes the best solution is manually accessing something and checking that. And I think that especially with that, my tip would be don't be afraid of the language. Embrace it. So using the same tip that Juliano gave, I think that the best would be don't be afraid of getting out of your shell. Don't be afraid of doing something that for you it seems wrong, but everybody it's doing for a reason, and then search why that reason is. Especially from people coming from languages that are on a higher level of abstraction or use a lot of libraries to do things like JavaScript, Python. If you're coming from one of those, don't try to I see a lot of posts like that. Do I have an array.map method on Go? How do I do that? How do I mimic that? Do I have a library for that? Don't try to do that. Try to look to the resources that you have in hand and try to embrace them. And then when you do that, you're gonna have a really good experience and you're gonna have a really awesome thing. And the last tip that I would give, that I would give right now, this is not from my experience, but especially from the experience of my live streams, especially when I talk about Go. Don't freak out, especially with channels and Go routines. Don't freak out. Take your time, try to learn it step by step, because I see a lot of people seeing those keywords, seeing those patterns, and they simply like, oh, I don't even want to know what that is. That is for somebody that's really smart, and that's not true. So don't freak out. Try to do the simpler things first, and then you're gonna see that the other features of the language, they are gonna go on the same route as well.
Absolutely. Very, very, very good advice. Thank you so much. And I just want to end on the tip that Lauren gave, because I think it's been the one back when I was getting into development. It was not Go, it's PHP. But when I was getting into it, it was the best thing that I could do was just to choose a small project I wanted to build and just jump in. Just I didn't do a ton of watching all these lectures and reading a ton about this stuff. I read some of the basics, started building the project, failed a bunch, but then just kept working on it. And within a week or two, I was pretty good at PHP. Had a lot to learn still, but I had a real project that I was building and learning about databases back in the day, things like that. So it helped me a ton, even for PHP, definitely for Go, for really anything, just kind of jumping in and learning as you go, and having a vision of what you want to build, rather than kind of looking at that as like the academic sort of way of learning the kind of academia part of it before actually writing code. So not that learning the why it works is bad. That's certainly good, but diving in is good. So just wanted to end on that.
One last tip before
Absolutely,
we
yes.
wrap up here.
Of course, yeah.
Something that we mentioned about the communities is also a good tip. If you start working with Go, dig into the community. The community is there to help you, and we are all there to learn together. So if you can join a GopherCon in your country, or you can actually watch online, or you can join the Discord and Slack channels for GoBridge or Women Who Go, or any of these communities, it would be awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, good advice. Yeah. That's the best part of the community, right? And what makes a good community is folks helping other folks. So yeah, Lauren, Arthur, Juliana, thank you so much for joining. Like I said, pretty short episode, but I think we covered some really important stuff, really interesting stuff. From a selfish standpoint, I learned something, so that's good. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you everyone that watched. I was trying to put in some comments on the screen so we could get your feedback there. But yeah, for episode 8 of the KMF Cast, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.